Welcome to episode 34 of Leadership Untitled with Kareen Turner. That's me, and I am a leadership development expert, and I like to talk about money. I'm also a salary strategist, and I am owning what that means. And that is part of what we're talking about today. What I'm diving into, we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. We're going to be doing some math, not quite public math because I do have the math already calculated, but I want you to call all of your colleagues, call your community, listen to this episode together because I'm going to share a really simple formula that you can use for all of my data loving friends, colleagues, that you can use to help kick imposter syndrome's butt once and for all. I'm going to roll the credits and then we're going to jump into it. All right, welcome back. Episode 34. As I said, we're talking about how to kick imposter syndrome once and for all with math. That's right, math. Let me tell you, there's even a story around me and math and science, um, which I'll probably say for another time, the full story. But where I do want to land it is that it was something that I never felt comfortable with, never thought that my brain was configured to conquer math, conquer science. And as a result, my grades in high school showed that compared to all of my other subjects where I excelled in. And that carried with me for quite some time until I decided to return to school to get my master's in nutrition, which you definitely need science, you definitely need math. And I realized that not only is it a skill that's in my wheelhouse, that I also love it. Public math, doing it on the fly, I'm going to say it's not necessarily something I enjoy doing, but it also doesn't mean that I'm not good at it. And that's part of imposter syndrome, how it's insidious. There's a lot of conversation around it, and I'm adding my voice to the mix, and I have another episode on imposter syndrome that addresses it from a different perspective. But for today, it's going back to that because I'm not necessarily the best at being on top of calculating, doing calculations in front of someone, or not having the answer super quick because I don't know all of the addition and subtraction, division secrets out there. It doesn't mean that I'm not good at it. It doesn't mean that I haven't worked and developed a mastery for math, especially in the field of nutrition and clinical nutrition. So that is what we are going to talk about. A few years ago, I heard Questlove, and if you don't know who Questlove is, woo, we can still be friends. But I do want you to go look him up. Questlove is a drummer, part of the iconic hip hop band The Roots. If you haven't heard of The Roots, we can also still be friends, but you absolutely have to go look them up. Um, yes, if you know, you know, it's going to be one of those. If you know, you know, but really truly go look them up, listen to a couple of songs. Iconic hip hop band. And Questlove is an incredible drummer that's part of that band. Well, a few years ago, quite a few years ago, he shared this 10,000 hour mastery rule that as a drummer, he works on his craft because obviously that's what he does for a living. It's also a passion of his, but he recognized that he needed to be consistent about improving and about mastering being a drummer. And I have never looked into where the 10,000 number came from until a couple of weeks ago. But that story, his sharing that experience stuck with me for a long time. And when I first heard him say it again a few years ago about the 10,000 hour mastery rule, it made me feel bad. I will say that was a place that I was in. And instead of taking action, any type of action to change it, I just let it make me feel bad in terms of, well, I'll never reach that number. 10,000 is so huge. I don't even have the time, all of the excuses, and I kind of just tucked it away. But it's come up every now and again in the back of my mind. And I was like, I should work towards that. I should be aiming towards a goal. Well, a few weeks ago, couple of weeks ago, I'm actually not quite sure what happened. And that's the way it is sometimes. Sometimes there's nothing necessarily that precipitates a downward spiral into questioning who you are, how you show up, if you're really meant to do the work that you're doing, are you making an impact? That's where I was a couple of weeks ago. And especially when I am here with you and I just had a brain fart. I'm pretty sure I introduced myself at the start of the podcast, but if I didn't, I'm Kareen Turner. This is Leadership Untitled, episode 34. I'm a leadership development expert. I also like to talk about money. I'm a salary strategist and I help women, especially women of color, create their salary compensation discussion action plans. And it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. Tying it into this conversation, if when I start to think about putting myself out there as an expert and it's in my bio across social media, it's how I introduce myself when people ask, what do you do? I lead with that expert, salary strategist. And yes, every now and again, not often, but every now and again, I do fall into that space of, do I know what I'm talking about? How can I put myself out there as an expert? And all of the feelings of doubt, unworthiness pile into each other. Part of that, of course, is comparison. Our feeds, our social media content is likely curated to the work that we do, the passions that we have. And sometimes that can mean that you're seeing other people who you believe are kicking butt and taking no names and showing up boldly. And you're thinking, I can't live up to where they are. And they're doing such an incredible job. How can there be space for me in this field, in this area? And that's comparison. And we all know comparison is the thief of joy. So I was in that space, and almost immediately, the 10,000 hour rule that Questlove mentioned years ago popped into my mind. This time, I'm proud to say that I said that I went to do research instead of feeling bad about myself and oh, 10,000 hours seems unthinkable, undoable. I went to do some research. It is a minimal amount of research, I will tell you. I did not dive into this as I normally do because I quickly came to a conclusion about how I can use this as a data point to help me. So I'm just off to the side, reading off to the side. So the 10,000 hour rule was popularized by Malcolm Gladwell, who is an author that you have likely heard of. And this was something that he wrote in his book Outliers, which I believe was published in 2008. And here's what he writes: it takes 10,000 hours of intensive practice to achieve mastery of complex skills and materials like playing the violin or getting as good as Bill Gates. So, both hands on skills like playing the violin or drumming, and then also being as good as Bill Gates, which is probably theoretical, philosophical. And of course, with everything, there's controversy. There's people who think that that's not the case, and that's fine. You can dive into it, learn more about it. But the 10,000 hour rule has been with me for years. It has just kind of been in the back of my mind as a negative data point. And I am proud of myself for flipping it on its head. And that is the math we're going to talk about today. Because as I thought about 10,000 hours and have I developed the skills and everything else, I was just like, hold on a minute. Wait a minute. I have worked in my field for almost 15 years in leadership in food and nutrition. I've been in corporate for over 20 years. I was like, what does that 10,000 hours even break down to when I think of it from the proving ground of corporate and of leadership and the work that I have done every single day, Monday through Friday? Every single Monday through Friday, and truthfully, a lot of weekends as well. The development, the professional development that I sought on my own, that was offered by the organizations where I worked, what does that all add up to? And you may already say, oh, yeah, I already know the answer to that, but I didn't. So I went to do the math and I'm not going to talk it through for you. Instead, I've created this incredible one page, one page math outline here that you're seeing on your screen. I'm going to be looking off away from you to look at the screen. So 10,000 hours to achieve mastery. On average, a full-time employee working 40 hours a week, 52 weeks of the year, that number that's generally reported through your W-2 is 2,080 hours, full-time hours. So many of us, especially those of us in leadership, work many more hours than 40 hours a week. So we already know that that's a baseline number for a full-time team member. If you take 10,000 hours and divide that by 2,080 hours, it will take you 4.81 years to achieve mastery. So we'll round it up to 5 years, about 5 years to achieve mastery. Many of you who are listening to me today are like me, have more than 5 years of experience. When I saw that number, I was blown away because I can almost guarantee you that when I first heard Questlove mention this 10,000 hours, I was already in it for more than 5 years. And instead of just taking a moment and saying, well, what does that even add up to? Or what does that look like? I just felt bad about the fact that I couldn't reach that number. And I had likely already reached it at that time. I'm almost 100% sure that I was already in specifically the field of food and nutrition and leadership, operation leadership, at that point more than 5 years. And when I saw that number, yes, my mind was blown. And I then did math the other way. So I took my almost 15 years of experience and multiplied it by 2,080. And that came to 29,120 hours that I have formally, this is just full time work, that I have formally worked on mastering the skill of leadership, mastering the skill of operations, mastering how to have effective conversations about salary, about compensation, and not just for me, but also guiding others, my team members during that time, my colleagues, giving advice. 29,000 hours. Now, I want you to do the math yourself. And I want you to find me somewhere on social media and DM me or pop it in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube or if you are watching it on LinkedIn. I want you to pop it in the comments wherever you have this or email me. Find me somewhere and tell me what those hours are. What are the total number of hours that you have poured into developing your skill, your knowledge, your expertise, mastering the work that you do? And I know sometimes what can come on the tail of that is minimizing the work that we have done and somehow making it seem like those 29,000 hours or whatever hours whatever the total number of hours that you have put into mastering, that we can sometimes diminish and minimize that. And instead, I want you to use this number, use this equation to help bolster you, to help empower you, to help you sit in confidence in who you are and the work that you have done. That it's not just luck that brought you there, it's not just luck that's keeping you there. You have earned it and you deserve to be there. Many of you are like me, data junkies. And so that's what pulled me to this. So that sometimes we need a concrete example to work towards, a concrete number that we can look at. And that's what this is for me. And it was so powerful that I had to share it with each of you who are watching. And if you're someone who's saying, well, I don't have 5 years yet of mastery, so I can't kick imposter syndrome's butt because there's always one of you out there. No, that's not the case. Instead, you understand that you are working towards this goal. If that's the number that you choose to work towards. In doing, again, a tiny little bit of research, I saw that Tim Ferriss, who the two philosophies, I will say, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, and then Tim Ferriss has a 6 month. He believes that in 6 months that you can master a skill by focusing on quality instead of quantity. Then there are others who, from a research perspective, say that it's about 2 years. So, girl, I've got you covered across the spectrum in terms of recognizing your skill, recognizing your mastery, and not leaving it or saying or allowing your mind to say, I got here because of luck. I got here because of X, Y, and Z, but it's not because of the work that you have done. It is absolutely because of the work that you have done. You are where you are. You know the information. You show up every day in your job, or if you own a company, if you're working for yourself, solopreneur, you have shown up every day and you have earned the mastery that you are experiencing. And if you're on your way to developing it, own it. Look at, I am a plant mom. I love having my plants in the background here, but it's been about a year since it's actually just been over a year since I got my first plant, and then they've all come through. I am not a master in plants. I have leaves that are dying that I've carefully turned around so that you can only see the green ones. And it brings me consternation about it because I've grown so attached to my plants. I have not mastered plant mom life yet, but I'm working on it. I'm doing the research, I'm learning about the soil, and I am gaining confidence every single day in the work that I'm doing to develop the experience and knowledge and expertise to keep plants alive and to help them thrive as well. I think about it from being a mom perspective because, ooh, in addition to imposter syndrome, there's guilt. There's so much around momhood that makes it a joy and also can drain us a little bit. And I give myself credit in terms of the hours that I have been a mama, and not just for my oldest, who's about to turn 7, but I'm giving myself credit for her 7 years, and I'm giving myself credit for my 4-year-old years as well, because they're 2 different people, and I am developing the skill and the mastery to understand who they are and to be an expert as their mother. This applies to almost every area of your life that you're feeling like, oh, I'm not making progress. You absolutely are. You absolutely are. And this, what's on your screen, the math that's on your screen right now, it's not about focusing on perfection, because even those people who we identify as being goats, the greatest of all time, right? Questlove, here in the definition, Bill Gates, or other famous, incredible people who've done, wow, mind-blowing things, right? They mess up. And unfortunately for them, their mess ups are usually public to all of us. But they not only mess up, they also continually push themselves. So they're not stopping at that 10,000 hour mark. They're pushing themselves to continue to learn and innovate. So instead, I'm sharing this as a point of reference, a data, again, concrete proof of something that can sometimes feel nebulous, that can sometimes feel intangible. Your expertise, your intellectual property, your intellectual potential can sometimes feel like we can't hold it in our hands. And so, because of that, we can work our way into doubting. So, I'm offering you this as a way to quantify your experience, again, to sit in your mastery and to own it, for you not to minimize what you know just because it's easy for you. Just because it's easy for you doesn't mean that it's easy for everyone else, and doesn't mean that it's commonplace. And in fact, you likely at one point had to learn how to do it. And I want you to use this data point to propel you forward, to not just sit here at the 10,000 hours or wherever you are, 29,000 hours for me, which I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of wherever you are as well. But I want you to push yourself to do something new, and then to give yourself grace along the way, whether it is being a plant mama, whether it's to a mama to your children, whether it is taking on, like one of my incredible friends, being a triathlete working towards an Ironman. Shout out to you, girl. Uh, Giving yourself grace along the way, and recognizing, if you need to, come back to this math and just calculate it to help ground yourself. Because here's what I know: not even geniuses, not even geniuses, no one gets it right the first time and every single time after it. More importantly, they also don't do it alone. You've got surgeons, physicians who have a whole team of nurses and administrators that support them. You have drummers, for example, that are taking lessons, learning from others, researching. You have authors like Malcolm Gladwell who have copywriters and publishing giants that are around them. You've got film stars, influencers, all of them have communities that they turn to help them better their craft, to help lift them up, to help encourage them, and to help support them. Seeking help and accepting it doesn't diminish your expertise or your intelligence. It doesn't diminish the work that you have done. It doesn't say, because you sought help, because you asked a question, that all of a sudden those years of work, the education that you sought. Oh, and that's a side point. As you're calculating, I didn't do it, but count your education in it. If you have specific education working that helped you get to where you are, count it as part of this. I truly based my time on those 2,080 hours. But I, at one point, will go back and add in my education, add in the professional, personal development that I have done on my own time, and add that into the hours. But asking for help, getting back to the point, asking for help does not minimize, absolutely does not minimize your intelligence or your expertise. You deserve to be where you are. I want you to own it. I want you to own your intelligence, and I want you to own your mastery. So, thank you so much for listening, for looking at my public math here on the screen. I'm going to pop it off so that I can say it again. You deserve to be where you are. Own your intelligence, own your mastery. And if you had fun or if you learned something, or if this conversation helped to empower you in a different way, I want you to share it with your community so that you can pay it forward and empower them to own their intellectual potential, their intellectual property, their expertise, their knowledge, and recognize their mastery. Share this episode with them. And if you ever want to learn more about the services that I offer, how we can work together, visit leadershipuntitledinstitute.com. I will see you here next week for another episode.